All right. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this month's QCWA National Zoom presentation. My name is Anthony Perales, AI1U, and I have the honor of serving as the acting president of the Quarter Century Wireless Association. And as y'all probably familiar with, September is National Preparedness Month, and it is a perfect time to highlight how amateur radio continues to play a vital role in keeping our communities informed, connected, and resilient. So tonight's program reflects that very spirit. Uh, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Patrick Bolan, KJ7ZSU. He is the head wrangler at Geochron. Uh, Patrick Patrick um, will be sharing the remarkable story of Geochron's legacy and innovation, from the mechanical clocks that inspired generations of hams to the modern digital platforms that continue to support global awareness and preparedness. Patrick has a fascinating journey to tell, including his 23,000-mile motorcycle ride across the U.S. and also visiting Geochron owners in all 48 states, which is amazing. I know you're going to enjoy this presentation. And before we begin, I just want a quick note. If you have questions during the presentation, please submit them through the Zoom Q&A box or chat window. Uh, those chat window will be monitored by myself and other QCWA board members that are present, and we will address them as many as possible if time permits at the end of the session. So with that, let's welcome Patrick Bolan, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much. I am Patrick. I'm going to share my screen here. Tell me if I'm doing that right. So you should see my big face, and then also you should see my face down in the lower left-hand corner. So hopefully that is working correctly. Uh, Let me know if that is not happening. So, because I can't tell from my interface here. So, I'm Patrick. I'm the owner of Geochron. And here I am. I'm sitting at the right here. This is a reverse image of where I am in Camas, Washington, which is just across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon. And I'm sitting here in my shack. And in my shack, my favorite thing to do is to leave. And I just as Anthony mentioned, I love going around the country and visiting Geochron owners. And here I am, parked outside of ARRL. And over the last 4 years on this motorcycle here, I have visited 64 Geochron owners in all 48 states. And maybe one of these days when I'm retired or something, I'll get all the way up to Alaska. And there's a guy waiting for me with a motorcycle in his garage, a Geochron owner over in Hawaii too. I'd hope to visit him someday as well. So, of course, when I went to Massachusetts, I went to MIT, and they have a Geochron Digital there, and they also have a Geochron Mechanical. And those of you who are super into solar weather will recognize Dr. Tamitha Skov. She is the space weather lady on multiple platforms, and I spent some time with her down in Los Angeles. She's one of our beta testers, so that is super fun for me, and she is as smart as she sounds. Man, that was a great conversation, a unique individual. But most of my people that I visit are amateur radio people who have a big view of the world, who are tremendously educated. And so here is David Slobodnik, and he's over in Alabama, and I visited him here. I think this was about 2 years ago, but I've seen it at Hamcation since. So I spent the night at his house with my motorcycle parked out front. And then he's got three parrots and two dogs. And then I woke up in the morning and we did a Q&R with Q&A with his Elmers. And then I got on my motorcycle and we all said goodbye. And then I went off to visit another guy in Florida. If there was a foundation story to be told about Geochron Digital, which is being displayed here, it's the tremendous feedback and constructive feedback, truly, from the amateur radio community. That's really, really been helpful in growing our little micro business. But the business goes back way further than just me. We've been building and restoring mechanical clocks since 1964. Here I am with Dr. Heine in Louisville, Kentucky. So 1964 was when the Geochron clock was created and really saw its heyday when there was no other way to visualize the gray line in real time, unless you had a logbook. But to see a machine that would go into have an inverted gray line and then an extroverted gray line at different times, that didn't exist until Dr. Kilberg invented it here, as you can see here. And here's an example of what the mechanical clock looks like. Those of you who have been around a long time may recognize this as being the king of the shack. So here I'm in summer solstice, right? So the sun is it is the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere and the shortest day of the year. Sorry, I got that wrong. It's the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere and the shortest day of the year or winter in the southern hemisphere. And this clock weighs 35 pounds. It's all a machine. You can see that the bows here, those blue shades, are provide that shadow upon which the map, which is 6 feet long, wraps around the whole thing. And because they're straight up and down, we know that we're in the equinox when this clock was being set up. And that panel that's folded over to the side, that's the diffusion panel, so that those LED lights will show. And putting it all together, it's very photogenic, which is why they put it into movies like The Hunt for Red October and Clear and Present Danger. People talk to me about that all the time. And in fact, here's the late James Earl Jones on the set, and this is a Paramount publicity photo with a Geochron mechanical in the background. Now, on one of my visits, this was in Alabama, I visited Captain Nick. He's like, "You got to stay with me. I've got this place on the Gulf. It's really great. I got a boat." And I'm like, "No kidding." So Captain Nick was actually the captain he was the captain on the frigate where The Hunt for Red October was filmed. And this is how he became familiar with The Hunt for Red October, of course, and also Geochron, which was featured in that film. And here he is as a man of a certain age in his front room with that Geochron behind him. And then he's got his picture of him. And man, what a great visit that was. But really, just truly the way that Geochron people are. They're well traveled, often well educated, certainly expansive world thinkers. That's why they like maps, and that's why they like Geochron. Just those are my people. So the most important guy here in the picture is the old guy, the oldest guy, and that's Dr. James Kilberg. And he died a long time ago, but he was the one that invented the Geochron mechanical clock. He was an inventor and engineer of sorts. The youngest guy in the picture with the blonde hair is not me, but it is his son. And so his son is now retired in Lake Tahoe, and he ran the company for about 40 years with the family until it finally came to me up here in the Pacific Northwest. And many of you may know the story of Ronald Reagan, who, when Gorbachev came over from after the fall of the Iron Curtain, Reagan gave Gorbachev a Geochron, which with Reagan owned one too, and as an example of a diplomatic gift and an example of American ingenuity. This was really the heyday of Geochron Mechanical, right before the internet struck. So when people look back at Geochron, they're talking about the famous people who have owned mechanical Geochrons, and that is a super great story. I spend most of my time working on the digital, which I invented about 8 years ago, along with a host of programmers that live close to me and who I just met with a couple of hours ago downtown for coffee. So, but I'm proud that of all the things that have disappeared in the mist of time, all those mechanical oddities that you cannot get your hands on anymore, the Geochron mechanical clock still exists today, and we make it out of Colorado Springs. So we do about 300 restorations per year because we're the only shop in the world that will touch or know what to do with the Geochron mechanical clock. And then we build about 100 new clocks per year to order. And so that's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 employees at any given time. And I'm proud that that I was not the one to dismiss it off into the history, but it still exists today because it's really a beautiful thing. I've got one upstairs in my house, a Geochron mechanical clock. Anyway, so here's what that looks like, and you'll see pictures of installations throughout this short presentation. This is one that was in the attorney's office in Texas, and on the other side of that wall is a digital clock. So before I go on any further, I'm going to just pause for a moment, and I'll pause a couple times throughout the presentation and just check the Q&A to see if there are any people who have submitted something. And there are no open questions, but if you just have a question, just type it into the Q&A and I'll stop and I'm going to check that little box in front of me like I see it right now, and I'll be happy to answer those questions because those are the most interesting presentations. I know what I'm going to say, but I don't know what you're going to ask. And since you're talking to the owner of the company, you'll probably get more than you wanted to know because I bear the full cognitive load of Geochron in my head. So please, I want to talk about it. All right, nothing yet here in the Q&A. Don't be afraid to ask a question. I'll answer it. So let's keep going.
Hey, George. Patrick. There's
Yeah,
George is raising his hand. I'm gonna
sure.
unmute his mic first. Uh,
Great.
oh wait, he just disappeared. Well, George, if you wanna still ask your question, just raise your hand. I'm gonna go to David Faust right now, so he can go ahead and unmute your mic, and you have the floor.
Go ahead,
Oh,
David.
well, sir, I actually inadvertently hit the wrong button, so I apologize for that.
Oh, no
Welcome.
worries, no
Welcome to the
worries.
presentation.
There'll be more opportunities. If anybody has questions, they could use the Q&A or raise their hand when Patrick leaves this space for those to ask questions. We'll be happy to answer them. All right, go ahead, Patrick.
All right, good. Let's get back to some more slides and then we'll start talking about amateur radio, ham radio in just a minute. So, on the other end of the wall, there is a beautiful Geochron digital clock, and this is more my baby, and we're going to talk about that. So, what happened was I bought the company for the price of its parts, basically inventory, about 10 years ago, and that's because the idea of the Geochron mechanical clock was expensive and beautiful, but kind of on the decline, and had been for a number of years. I had one. I loved the company, and I'm like, I'll do this. And so, but I didn't have enough money to pay for all the inventory that they had to build the clock. They were still building some clocks. And so I offered my own house up as collateral so the current owners would hold the loan. Fortunately, I was able to pay that off. But about a year later, we ran out of money. So have you ever had that moment when you open up your checking account and there's not enough in there to pay your bills? That happened to Geochron about a year after I bought it. So people had been telling me in that time, why don't you make this digital? Or even, isn't it digital already? And I'm like, no, no, it's not digital. This is amazing. Don't you love the mechanical charisma of this clock? And yeah, we do, but it was really expensive. It's still expensive today. So we cleared a wall out of the machine shop, and Tegan and I sat down and we got to work and we thought, how do we deliver a 4K Geochron to our customers that they can configure? And here's what we did. It's something quite unusual. We built a Geochron around a 4K screen that you can configure in your own shack. So let me explain how we did that. So this is what the Geochron looks like. It's a hardware platform that plugs into the HDMI port on your computer. And so the problem we ran into is that if I was going to stream a 4K image to you, and it's a map that you're going to show maybe 24/7, which many of our Geochron owners do, that's going to be 20 gigabytes an hour, like you're watching Netflix. And you know, if you watch Netflix for 2 weeks straight and never slept, that you would get a note from your ISP saying, hey, you've exceeded your bandwidth. So what we needed to do was to supply a way to stitch together live information and layers like satellite DXing, moon positions, satellite positions, weather, all that stuff, and stitch it together with the maps and render it on your side. So you're not working at 20 gigabytes an hour. The little unit is powering through into your 4K TV at 20 megabytes an hour, which makes it good for your ISP and something that it's sort of like choose your own adventure because you could choose what you want to see on that 4K TV out of the 85 layers on the map that are available. And this is what it looks like. So you got to think of this little hardware platform as like a laptop computer that doesn't have a screen, and instead of a keyboard, it has a remote. So here I am taking it out of the box, and there's my remote. And then the Geochron Atlas will plug directly into the 4K input of your TV. That's usually like HDMI 1 or HDMI 2. Some of my customers will just share HDMI ports, like they'll have it on one, and then they want to watch TV, they put it on number two, they go back to the Geochron. And some people, I just talked to somebody on Monday that like they go downstairs, they unplug their Geochron and plug it into their 4K TV downstairs because they don't want to be separated from it. But using this has been a great platform for us. So, like, for example, if you on this cruise ship, which is a picture taken from the second largest cruise ship in America in a promotional video, if you've been on a cruise ship, you know that Wi-Fi is expensive because it comes from not a fiber optic cable. but it comes from a satellite. So for on this cruise ship, which is the second largest cruise ship in the world, the Princess of the Seas and Cardinal Lines, that's the bridge, and they've got a geochron in the background. It looks beautiful, and it's just sipping information from that satellite feed instead of taking 20 gigabytes an hour on a full-time movie. And that's how they get live information on the geochron in that commercial installation. And then there are other people that use it for different things. So here's astronaut Scott Kelly, and he's got a geochron behind him in his home office in Colorado Springs. And there's a dude that I would like to visit. Actually, we've had conversations back and forth, and he says, "Oh, it reminds me of being on the International Space Station." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm never going to go there, but that's a fine compliment for this geochron that we made from a mechanical clock. Somehow, it turned into something beautiful that even astronauts like." So this is what it looks like in real time. I'm going to jump over here to mine. This is real time right now. I'm just screen capturing it from the 4K that's right behind me here. And you can see that 20 meters is very hot, mixed in with a little bit of 15 meters. I don't see that very often. And then also 30 meters as the gray line stretches over the Atlantic Ocean between North America and Europe. That's because, as you know, as ham radio guys, you are working the gray line because the ionosphere is especially reactive during the twilight hours. If you look closely here, and I'm going to jump over to a zoom in of this, you can see here that there are different grades of the different grades of twilight that you can see. Looking closely here, you can jump over. So I have a note that you are not seeing the clock here. Is that true? If I jump over here to, is that right? So give me some, can't see it. Hold on just a minute. I might be sharing the wrong screen and we just figured that out. Just a moment. Hey, is that better? Let me know if you see my face down in the lower left-hand corner and you see a map off for the rest of the screen. Awesome. Okay, we're back in business. I don't think you haven't missed anything, just my face talking. But now it's set up correctly. So let me jump over here. Let's get in a little more detail because you're just looking at it on your sad 1080 screen when this is really in my office is in 4K. So here we see Parks on the Air. I see the George W. Bush carrier that's off the coast of the Eastern Ocean, of the Atlantic Ocean. I see the Roosevelt that's coming in. The Reagan is up in Bremerton. There's a typhoon that's just going nowhere and hopefully stops before it gets to Hawaii. If I look into the Gulf, I see lightning strikes that are happening and a lot of hot weather that's going on that hopefully does not turn into a hurricane, although inevitably it might. And then you see a lot of activity that's running on between North America and I think I'm in set to FT8 right now. This is what I'm looking at. Jumping back over to the larger map, the International Space Station is coming over Ukraine right now. And there is even up, and there's earthquakes, and there was a big one in Nikoski, Alaska. There was a 6.0, and you see that from that big orange circle. Where it's green is where it's raining, whereas blue is where it's snowing, and then you can see cloud cover in various places. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all these layers right now. Coming back up to my thing. There we go. So one of our favorite things to show is the International Space Station. Everybody loves that, but you know there's a camera on the International Space Station called a LiDAR view. That's the ISS LEV. And so watching it on the Geochron means that it's accomplishing what I'm trying to do with the map here, which is to create a living map where things are actually happening. What a great way to do that by having a picture of Earth in real time. Even lightning strikes at night, especially over the Gulf or over the Sahara, where they're frequent this time of year. Or you can see cities passing by, as we just did. And of course, on the map, you could see the International Space Station running too. I mentioned the different earthquakes that we have. North America, we have them for the whole globe, but North America is particularly interesting because we have a lot of money, so we can afford really expensive earthquake networks. So the little ones get shown too. Like you see those little dots up there, up in Alaska. Those are all volcanic earthquakes. You see the orange line, that is the Pacific Rim, right down into Los Angeles, where there are lots of small earthquakes that are occurring. But unusual in the time that we've been working on Geochron, there have been earthquakes arising in the Midwest. You see that 3.74 above Dallas. So there's no caldera there. There's no tectonic plates there. What's causing that earthquake? Well, I found out when I rode through that area late last year on my motorcycle to visit customers in Texas, what they're doing is they're taking seawater and then they're injecting it down into the mantle of the earth, and then the seawater floats and pushes up the oil to where they can get to it economically. And that's fracking, and that's why that causes earthquakes. I think it's pretty cool that you could see that on a geochron. So you're also live commercial flights. And I think I'm showing some live flights right now on mine. Let's just jump over and use the actual geochron for that. So I'm going to zoom in here and I'm just going to open up the map and go into the zoomed region of how about the USA West, because Alaska Airlines spends a lot of time in that region. So here it's just rendering. We're going to pick together some different weather patterns that are occurring right now. And it's going to take a second to put that all together. Man, 20 meters is super active right now. So there's a large weather system, and you see those little planes that are flying out of Seattle. Let's come in for a closer view. I'm going to jump over here. There's Idaho. There's Seattle coming down the coast. Those are the planes. Those are Alaska Airline planes that I'm tracking. Come up here to the top of the map, and I'm going to drag my icon up there. And there are 139 Alaska Airline flights in the sky out of 11,693 commercial flights that are available. And if I'm right, if I come down here to Alaska, a little bit out of there, sorry, to Hawaii, you can see that there is the party line to Hawaii, which is a frequent vacation destination for those of us who live on the West Coast. And speaking more specifically to that, here's all the different airlines. All the airlines are available to be tracking. We're not at the point where we can track tail numbers or individual flights, but we will be getting there, I think, in 2026. So we're certainly capable of that. We've just got a long list of things that we'd like to accomplish before we get there. All right. Coming back over to the slides. Here we go. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time putting together some really great weather packages. It's 35 weather layers in all. So here 2 years ago, there were 3 hurricanes that were happening in the Atlantic Ocean, and there were 3 typhoons happening in the Pacific Ocean. But this last year, 2024, was no less interesting. Here comes Hurricane Beryl into Texas. Now here, it was this is a different kind of a map. If I jump over to my big map here, you can see that this is more of a topographical map. It's a visualized topographical map, but this one is an actual picture that's been overlaid, a picture taken by a satellite called a geosatellite image. This is the way the world looked in actuality at the time the picture was taken by that satellite from NOAA, probably 326 miles up in the air. So, but I've overlaid that with earthquakes, aviation, and also radar to give you a complete picture of the weather, complete weather picture of what's happening. That's just a couple layers that are available there in the Geochron. You can also see unusual things. And let me move my face so that you can get a better picture of this. Over here, on the morning of January 8th, NASA has a satellite that's flying around that's looking for hotspots on Earth. And sometimes those are manufacturing, but very often they're fires. Here in the West, we got fires all the time. And so, especially this time of year. But on January 8th, there were a number of hotspots that were coming up in Southern California and centered around Palisades. So you saw the fire begin to spread in the Palisades and Malibu area from January 8th to January 9th to January 10th. And this is exciting. So what we were seeing here is pollution, that PM 2.5 that was flowing over the Pacific Ocean. And that's how that was going there. So it's really cool that you could see that on a geochron. I'm going to put my face back. Good. Let me hold on just a moment. All right. And then the typical stuff that you would expect to see with time lapse and everything that you would get on like a weather app, you would be seeing that on a geochron in 4K for the whole Earth. And that's what Geochron is special. We're really great at stitching all those images together into a big 4K map that people love. And we'll talk a little bit later about ocean temperatures that you can see around Peru and around Brazil. And you can see that the Atlantic Ocean is always much warmer than the Pacific Ocean, at least in the northern climes. Now, another layer that we added, and it's doesn't have much to do with ham radio. It doesn't have much to do with weather, but it is the position of carrier locations all over the earth. So I'm a big news guy. I like to know where the carriers are. This is the maximum extension of where American and other people's mobile firepower is. That would include China, India, France, the UK, not Russia. They don't have one anymore. Theirs is in dry dock, probably permanently. And then also, I feel like I'm getting one. I said France. Oh, Turkey has one, has an amphibious carrier, and Greece has an amphibious carrier as well. And Italy has an amphibious carrier, not Greece. So anyway, when I took this picture, you could see that the Charles de Gaulle, which was in France, was between Thailand and the Philippines. The Shandong, the Fujian, and the Liaoning was over into China, and they were at dock. If I go to my Geochron now, I'm going to jump over here to. I need to get to global mode to figure that out. Okay, so hold on. We're going to jump over here, and you'll see me work the map. There we go. Coming down to the global mode. Let's check out where the carriers are right now. So you'll see it rendering. Again, green is where it's raining, blue is where it's snowing, and then we have the carriers. Now I'm jumping over here. I'm going to zoom in just here on my interface all the way over to the ASEAN region. And it's a little bit difficult because there's so much information. The International Space Station is coming into Southeast China right now. You could see that the Shandong is out on patrol above the Philippines, where they've been doing a lot of work. And then we have the Sumo, which is a Japanese amphibious carrier down there. The George Washington has turned to the south. And the Nimitz is doing chores and covering the Middle East over by the forward patrol right above my head, which at the northernmost point of the Indian Ocean. So now people ask, where'd you get all that information? Like, are you divulging? Does loose lips really sink ships? The answer is yes. But the answer is also, I'm just looking at government websites and also people who are in the know. I'm just reading the news and taking a pretty educated guess. But believe me, if the United States did not want me to know where the carriers were, I would not know where the carriers are. I'm just reading the news just like you are, and then we're assembling this map every Tuesday morning. So, okay. I'm coming up here. I'm going to answer some questions here in just a second. Just before I do, there got to be so many layers, and I'm going to jump back over here to this is not what I expected. Well, there we go. 85 layers in all, and people got tired of using this little up, down, left, right remote, so we put it together in an app so that you can control the Geochron right in front of you. It's quick and it's fast because they don't have to think about the menu and rendering the menu, because rendering in 4K takes a lot of horsepower on the computer. So this is much faster to do it with your own phone. So we're going to talk about ham radio in a minute. But before I do, I'm going to look down here to the Q&A and I'm going to answer some questions. Hold on just a minute. All right. Just a minute here. Okay, good. Yeah. Hi, Patrick. I assume some of these layers are available by subscription. How does that pricing work? I will talk about that at the end. What's that funny figure eight loop near Hawaii? Yeah, that's a great question. And so I made a feature just to explain that. Hold on just a moment. And what he's talking about, if you see right just next to Hawaii, there is that figure eight. That's called the analemma. And if the sun is high in the summer and low in the winter, then the sun line, then you took a picture of it 365 days a year and made a composite image of the position of the sun at high noon, it would form a figure eight in the sky. That figure eight might be different depending on where you are in the planet, but this is a frequent question. And so to explain, I put this illustration into the Geochron. So here you can see in this little menu app, it takes 6 months for the sun to go all the way up to the top for summer solstice, and then the gray line changes and folds over because we go all 180 degrees around the other side of the sun, and then we hit winter solstice, and in the middle that would be the equinoxes. And so when I look at the Geochron, or often on globes, you'll see it printed on a globe. It's trying to tell you where the sun is at high noon. So Kathy, that's the answer to your question. Craig, you said as capabilities improve over time, are there firmware upgrades available? So yes, the answer to that question is back in the menu. So here I go over here to System, and at the very beginning of Geochron, we had like 100 out in the field. Today we have thousands, but we had 100 out in the field, and then my phone started ringing off the hook saying, "Hey, the clock is an hour off. It's not really 7:59 EDT. It's like 6:59 EDT." And I got 5 calls, and so eventually we figured out that, well, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, we had forgotten to include daylight savings time. And so it was a good thing that we were able to update the program. We've updated the program many times since then, and the system to do that is in the System tab called Download System Update. About every other month, we put out an update. It has optimizations, sometimes bug fixes. I'm not saying things do go wrong occasionally. We want to fix little bugs in the program. And then also a lot of new features, like we just rolled out Parks on the Air here 2 months ago. And so it's the download system update that makes that possible when it's connected to the internet. If you don't press that button, it'll still download it and then download the most recent update and then apply it the next time it's booted. But this has been a great way for us to grow and improve the program, all for people, because we've got plenty of great things that we want to do, and download system update has been a great feature for us. All right, next question. As capabilities, firmware. Yeah, okay. Jim asked, during wartime, would you lose these feds? So I'm thinking that you're talking about the carrier layer, and I answered that saying that I'm just reading the news. And so, and also remember that icon is like 200 miles by 75 miles across, and it's really a guess. It's a guess that's being made by the U.S. Naval Institute. It's a guess that's being made by ChatGPT. I'm not out there. No one's telling me for real information. We're just posting it. And a lot of times, carrier nations are loud about where their carriers are because they're using them for diplomatic missions. They're also trying to provide security and pressure to certain regions. Like you're always going to find one close to Taiwan. You're always going to find one close to UAE and Qatar because those are where hotspots are. So the nations are really loud about that. All right. Kathy says thanks, and Mike says, Patrick, you open a second generation Atlas render. All this is great, or does the latest hardware have all the horsepower that's needed? This is a very timely question. Let me explain why. As we added more and more layers, it became apparent that our little computer here, da-da-dum, this little Atlas can't show all the layers at one time. But that's not going to keep us from adding new layers. And so the goal is to keep the price of the hardware under $500, because if I said this was $2,000 or $5,000, like the computer that I'm talking on right now, my studio computer, then we wouldn't survive as a company, because people would be like, I'm not going to spend $2,000 on that. But $500 is something that most people can get into if they love maps. And so we have optimized the hell out of this little computer, but it's not going to show all 85 layers at the same time. However, in early 2026, there is a new video render codec that we are developing right now and writing into the software. If you own an Atlas, you will find that it will be more capable in 2026 just from software optimizations that we are doing. The reason why I'm referring to the menu here is that you can see under optimization options, and I'm going to go down and highlight that yellow. Enable overclocking. If you do not enable overclocking and you push the Geochron to its maximum level, as far as like it's about ready to reboot on you, and it's getting warm, then it will turn off the layer that has the highest load. And a lot of times that's some animated layer. If you select enable overclocking, then you can have that and play all the layers that you want, but it's going to reload on you eventually, and it's just going to say, I can't. So that's because the computer is less than $500. There are computers that'll do better than this, and we're looking into that. So there's the answer for you. But all right, so there's enable overclocking. Next question, how to drop the layers to only show 20 meters? I will answer that in a moment. How is AI impacting your work and product? So we're using AI to like ask where the carriers are, because AI is pretty amazing because it knows the whole internet that is not in my head. But otherwise, the information that we're showing is live, and so we don't need, as far as what you see on the screen, we don't need AI to explain that this is the world as it exists. AI is a lot of a forecasting tool that we might use it for, and we have used it to economize some of our development, but it's not the watershed moment that, say, other companies are having because we're just a data aggregator that's putting data that's already out there into beautiful maps. But believe me, I'm all about AI. I think it's pretty cool. Either are Geochrons sold direct from the manufacturer or the retail distributors? Yes, there are distributors for the digital side. There are a number of major ham radio outlets that would carry them, but then they're also at geochron.com. But on the mechanical side, they're pretty much only available from geochron.com. That would be the mechanicals, and the mechanicals are $2,000 to $5,000, and they're all built to order. And then Jim asks, what speed is Cat5 versus Wi-Fi speeds? Wi-Fi is probably about 20 to 25% faster to get the data. So I'm using Ethernet right now, but I can hook it up to Wi-Fi, and I will show you that. That is right here, but you can see I'm on wired Ethernet. Okay, next question. How well does a Geochron work at 1080 resolution? The answer is it works perfectly fine, but it doesn't look as good. So what we do for that is going down here we provide a different map for that. So if I select low res map, it's going to have bigger fonts. It's going to be kind of a dumbed down version of a Geochron because you're not going to get the scintillating, crispy detail that you would get in 4K. You won't be able to read the smallest fonts. You won't even get close, like city names, sometimes country names. We're taking those out if you select the low res map. If my friends ask me, oh, will you please, can I get a Geochron from you? Can I get a deal from you? My first question is, do you have a 4K TV you're going to put it on? Because otherwise, I just don't, it just doesn't look good to me. It looks like watercolor because it was built for the beautiful detail of 4K. Okay, will you be at Hamvention 2026? And this is my last question before I move on to talk about a little bit ham radio stuff on the Geochron. And I think so. I think so. So we're a micro business. So when I leave, that means that I have to be in charge, even though I'm doing a show at Hamvention. So I hope so, but this is a limitation of a micro business. On the Geochron digital side, all of this is being run by 4.5 people. So a lot of it's automated, and sometimes I just want my life back because I'm so busy. And I love to get to these shows to connect directly with customers because they see me, and I usually know them when they walk up. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, Daniel, it's good to see you. So hopefully so. All right, I'm going to move on and I will come back and answer the rest of these questions towards the end. But let's talk for a moment about ham radio bundle stuff. So here is a beautiful view of a shack. This is one of the winners of our contest. I think it's 2023, and this is in Ottawa. I met the guy, super nice. What a great looking shack. So to create the ham radio workstation, this is how we did it. This should look familiar. Then we took FT8, Whisper, and DX, stuff that you would find on things like PSK Reporter, and put it into, and then also added geocentric projection, so that usually in a Geochron, noon is always in the middle of the map. But ham radio people, they want to be in the middle of the map according to their time zone, and so you can set that so that the gray line is always moving like this across the map, and you're always in the middle. And that is also happening in the ham radio bundle. And then, like I said, I am filtering. Here's FT8, I think, and I'm filtering for two things here. I'm using the band below to figure out what the colors are, so I know what's going on around the world. I want total situational awareness of what's happening more than just local awareness because I want to see what my other compatriots in amateur radio are doing. Now, the question that came up about filtering, and here's the answer. In this particular picture that I just showed you, coming out where there's a lot of like an explosion of fireworks coming out of Australia, this one right here, that's because I'm sorting for VK. And you can see the majority of stuff that's coming out of Australia is 20 meters, which, oh no, sorry, it was 17 meters at the time because I have 20 meters that's turned off here. And I'm hiding that with my face. Just a minute. There it is. See, 20 meters are turned off. But I'm sorting for VK. So now I can see call signs that are just coming in and out of Australia. So this is an example of all the filtering that you can do within the QSO reporting and the database that we're pulling from. And putting it all together, it's really busy. So here I'm looking at solar weather, planetary position, aurora forecast, ITU zones. I see CQ zones as well. I see I see precipitation. I see snowing. I see parks on the air, mostly in North America. And in a moment, we're going to get to maximum usable frequency, which I am not showing here, but satellites too. So every satellite that is in the sky that is publicly known can be tracked on a geochron. In this one, I'm particularly pointing out the AMSAT satellites. I think this is FM, the FM category. And so there they are spinning at 5 miles a second. Up and down they go. And then they also have a footprint that you can add to them. And coming in early 2026, we're going to be adding notifications so that you could select a satellite, and then the Geochron will give you an on-screen notification at a certain interval ahead to let you know that a satellite is heading your way. And then it will show the footprint, as you can see from X-Ray Whiskey to Charlie coming up right into past New Guinea up in Japan right now. And of course, for every picture that we get, there's a big call sign somewhere in their shack. And so you can put your call sign on the Geochron too. As big as whatever color you want. This is K3LR. This is Tim Duffy from DX Engineering. And I think he's got 3 of these in his shack. That is a shack that I would like to visit someday. And if you're a QRZ subscriber, you can put your logbook on there too, so you can show people where you've been. And cool stuff that you don't see other places. So this would be like the moon terminator. So the sun has a terminator, but the moon works on a different cycle. It's on a different orbital path around the Earth as the Earth orbits the sun. And so here, when I took this picture, there was a full moon in Australia. It was directly above Australia, and it was also noon in Australia. So the pink is where the moon is shining on Earth at that time. It's also where the sun is shining. So there was no place on Earth when I took this picture where it was nighttime and the moon was shining. But that's because they're on a different cycle. It's on a different cycle than the sun. I think it's pretty cool that you could see that on a geochron. And this should look familiar. That should look familiar. And that should look familiar. But although it's beyond my pay grade to understand what a lot of that means. And now we get into maximum usable frequency. So the green dots are the ionospheric radars that are pinging the atmosphere to find out what's bouncing back and what gets lost. So as amateur radio guys, you know that we are bouncing between the Earth and the ionosphere all around the planet to see how far we can get with the megahertz that we are working. The ionosphere, so the ionospheric radars, let's see down in Australia. I see 10, 10, 12, 11, 16 in New Zealand. So they are pinging the ionosphere directly vertical. And then once it doesn't return, we know that that is the maximum usable frequency because the ionosphere is not going to reflect the signal and thus propagate it around the Earth. So in Australia, that maximum usable frequency would be 10, because if you used 11, it would get lost in Western Australia, right? So here I am on the West Coast, and it's a 20. And let's say I want to go all the way over to Japan. So I'm on 20, and then my maximum usable frequency is what's reporting there. And then in Alaska and the Bering Sea, I'm at 17. And then in the Sea of Okhotsk, off the Kamchatka Peninsula, it's 16. And then it's 18 when I get to Japan. So my maximum usable frequency is 16, because if I did 20, it would get lost, well, clearly up around Alaska and certainly around the Sea of Okhotsk. So this is what maximum usable frequency is all about, and it's really easy to demonstrate that on Geochron. Now, where there are not ionospheric radars, like down in the southern Pacific Ocean, then there is a supercomputer somewhere, and it's not mine. It's somebody that is thinking about what the maximum usable frequency is there, because it's like a giant soup of radio reflectivity, as you can see in this version of it, which is using a heat map to demonstrate where the reflective areas are and the frequencies that you can use in the maximum useful frequency display around the Earth. But this also demonstrates a problem in that you cannot show everything on the Geochron. So like here, there, what am I looking at? I'm looking at maximum useful frequency, the grid lines on that, the gradient lines for it. I'm looking at Earth at night. I'm looking at precipitation. I'm looking at solar weather. I'm looking at DXing. I'm looking at the ionospheric radars, planetary positions. Oh, what else is in there? Oh, yeah, Maidenhead Grid. Hadn't mentioned that yet, and I just can't even tell where the planets are, where the continents are. So as a matter of fact, it's right smack dab in the middle of China, but you wouldn't know that because we can only work with so many colors simultaneously because we're humans. Uh, and like that's just for some people that is overwhelmingly busy. And so you can adjust the map to taste. Like you salt to taste, you can adjust the geochron to taste. And here's what that looks like. So using the example of surface temperature, I'm going to turn it on, looking at the eastern seaboard, and then I'm going to turn up the surface temperature in an opacity or a level between 0 and 100. And you can do this for just about every layer in the geochron. And then let's say you get to so many layers, it just gets too busy. Then you can take a certain number of them and you can save them as a configuration profile. And let's say I want to see just ham radio stuff right now. Now I want to see weather. Now I want to see all those satellite stuff. And so you can rotate through just like you can with like saving a desktop on your computer. You can save a configuration and then rotate through those or just choose one in the menu. So here's an example of how that works, and you can adjust ocean temperature to taste. All right. So another way to do it is by taking the map, and there are a number of different maps available in zooms, and turning it into grayscale. Now, this is not everybody's favorite, but it's my favorite because I think it's super cool to see all those live layers just popping in color above the Earth right there. And this is all celestial layers. It's satellites, it's DXing, it's up in the atmosphere. But then the world behind it, here shown in a ham radio map, is in grayscale. And that's another great way to look at the geochron. All right, so I'm going to pause here. And before I get into the final talk about what it costs to get into that, I'm going to jump over here and read a few more questions. Just a moment. Mike asks, I know you've had some long-time folks retire a little while back. Have you been able to find new folks to train up and support the mechanical clocks? And do you see them going forward? Oh, man, that is a great question. And one that I has given me these gray hairs in my goatee. So 2 years ago, we kind of had a crisis point with the mechanical shop, and I put out an email to anybody who I thought could do anything about it, and I said, I cannot run the Geochron mechanical shop and run Geochron digital at the same time. Can anybody help me, please? Because what was happening here in the Pacific Northwest was that Boeing and other aeronautical companies were stealing good machinists at rates that I could not afford. And so the mechanical clock was suffering a labor problem, a quality labor problem. And so there was an old dealer in Colorado Springs that said, you know what? We have an extra 3,000 square feet. We'd love to, they came and picked over my inventory. And then my most senior mechanical employee moved to Colorado with all the equipment and with all the parts. And now the shop lives in Colorado and they're doing great. So actually, they're doing better than I ever did as the shop manager because these people are legitimate clock workers. They're clock technicians. They're not just me figuring it out. So this has been one of the best things that happened in my life over the last 3 years. And it also accounts for the accelerated development that I've been able to put into Geochron Digital because I'm not running the machine shop anymore. So I'm very, very happy about this. And they're going to be around for a long time. All right. Jim asks, is there an 8K in the works? No, not yet. Geochron is pretty much well in bed with the 4K resolution. If we see a ubiquity of 8K TVs in the world, I'm sure we will move into the 8K realm, which would have even more detailed maps and more enhanced zoom zones. Lloyd asks, is this real time? So yeah, I am talking to you in real time. That's really I'm hungry. It's almost dinner here on the Pacific time. But as I show you the map here, that is actually in real time right now. As you can see from GMT and UTC down in the lower left-hand corner, that would be 1921 UTC, and just past midnight. Those of you in ham will know exactly where that's at, and then that's real. Okay, good. Kathy asks, Starlink satellites too? Yeah, sure. So if I come over here to the menu, no, I'm always pressing it too quick. Come over here to live, and I'm going to come down here to satellites. I'm not going to open them up, but here's an example. You can see that Starlink has, actually, they have thousands of satellites in the sky, but we had to put a limiter on the number of satellites that we showed because it just obliterates the screen with white dots. And then also, depending on what layers you're running, it really cooks up the computer too to be tracking 5,000 new vectors on the screen. And so that's Spacelink that you can see halfway down that list. But every public satellite is trackable on the Geochron. In fact, we just did a quick job for the U.S. Air Force Academy. They had launched 2 satellites. The professor really wanted their students to see it. And so, but it wasn't showing on ours through Celestrak. And so we're like, oh yeah, we could throw that on. So we put that on for them too. Jay asks, where are your servers? In the company or in the cloud? So the brains are in the company and the servers are Linode. If you're techie, you know what that means. Probably that means somewhere in Texas, but I don't really actually. I think it's Texas is where they're centered. But because of Cloudflare, they keep their servers and mirror images of their servers, and all the data that we provide is all over the world. So when there are outages, it's not because of servers, it's because something on our end got plugged up. We need a little bit of Drano. We get in there, we clean it up. It's just basic server work. If you work in servers, you know that happens all the time. Okay, can I see what the conditions are between Fort Myers, Florida, and Chloride, Arizona at any particular time? So this is where we get into zoom zones. In the beginning, we just had a global map. But if I come over here to zoom zones, you can see the zooms that are available. Now we're adding them all the time. We'll add a couple more here in the first and second quarter of 2026. The answer that you would be looking for would be like jumping in. Whoops, I hit a bad button. Coming over here to the entire USA. And then I'm going to zoom out. And as we look at this, you know, that blue, that's population gradient. I think it's so messy. I'm going to turn that down as a great example of what that is to use the opacity adjustment. And then the Earth at night too. So, that looks better. So this would be the way that you would get in. If you were expecting a pinch and zoom display that you could get all the way down into, say, like your city, the Geochron can't do that. We work within grids, and usually those grids are like half continental size, which works in a 4K version because it's really, really detailed. But no, you can't get all the way down to see your house. All right. Richard Pinney asks about other subscriptions. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Bill asks, do you recommend for any particular viewing screen for best size? And so, yes, you want to go with at least, we use 42 inches. TCL's usually the cheapest TV on Amazon. And I can't tell a difference between that and the expensive ones. So that would be good. And then I would say 42 inches is about right. You get smaller than 36, it's going to be difficult to make out all the detail. Will asks, there are 4K monitors and TVs. What do you like in the small, medium-sized monitors? Like I say, standard is about 42. Don't go under 36 probably. Will asks, and or TVs. I think I did that. Okay, let's talk about what it costs. That's the end of my questions. Just a moment. Coming back to this, here's what it is. So I've been talking about the Atlas platform. So you're going to need this. This normally is $4.99, and with the deal that I have for you, it's substantially less. It'll be in a couple slides. What's included is all the global maps in time in 16 layers. So if you just plug it into the internet and never pay another dollar, you just have the platform. I'm going to continue to pump satellite weather, and I'm going to pump aviation and a lot of cool things that you would see. And I'll show you what those are in just a minute. That doesn't cost anything. But for specific audiences like ham radio, the stuff that we have to pay to get some of that data, that costs a little bit of money per month. I'll explain that in just a minute. So what's the difference between what's included and what's in premium? Here's an example of everything that be included. You see some basic satellite weather, the greens and the different maps, the global, the times, time zones, and then you add some cool weather, more weather stuff, and it gets a lot more interesting. And that there's a little cost associated with it because I have to pay for that data. earthquakes too. This would be what would be in ham radio, and then I'm adding on to aviation and some also all the satellites are there. But then you add maximum useful frequencies, solar weather, more aviation, and DXing, and that comes at a cost to me. I pass that on to you. We're specifically in the amateur radio workstation. This is what's included between the DXing, the Whisper, which I haven't brought up yet, solar weather, center projections, satellites, moon terminators. Not included in this would be Parks on the Air, which I just added, so it's not in this particular screen, but that's there too. Early 2026, we're going to be adding SOTA too. That would be Summits on the Air, because it's just like if you're going to have POTA, why don't you have SOTA too? So now this is where the rubber hits the road. Everything on the left is what's free. So that would be satellites, weather, and manned satellites, commercial aviation, Earth and Night lights, those cool 4K maps, the ham radio map, pollution, which I did show you there a bit of in the Palisades fire, population density, which I turned down about 5 minutes ago, location pins. On the right-hand column are things that I have to purchase and get as data and then aggregate that out to you. That costs some money. So that would be weather presets like I've been showing you, ham radio bundles, $6 a month and so on. But if you wanted all the layers all the time, and half of our customers will do this because if they're going to buy a 4K TV, they want all the layers all the time, then they're going to go for Global Pass. And that would be a significant discount as if you bought everything, that's just $11 a month for the whole thing. So that would be all 85 layers all the time. All right. And so this is one of my favorites. This is a video that was taken at Dallas Love Airport of a big projection. This is the pilot's conference room, and they like to see real world conditions while the speaker's talking. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, so because you listened to the call, and then I'll pause and answer whatever questions that you have after this. Let me get back here and move my face over. Here is the deal. All right. Whoops. That is not the deal. This is the deal. That's the deal. Here it is. Wrong finger. So because you listened to the presentation, if you go to if you send an email to coupon@geochron.com, the system will automatically send you back a coupon code that will give you $75 off the base unit, which means it's just going to be a little over $400. And then with that, you'll get a free bundle of the amateur radio workstation, and you can have that for a year. And of course, shipping from us here in the Pacific Northwest. And so that is a better deal than what you would find at Hamcation, Hamvention, probably CPAC, which are shows that I've done. So that's the deal. Anyway, let me pause here and I'm going to go back to the questions and I'll answer more questions just a moment. Again, that's coupon@geochron.com. Is there an annual version? Right now, you can get, if you want to do bits and pieces, you can get you can do it on a monthly, quarterly, or an annual basis. The Global Pass is only annual. That's a question from Will. Dallas asks, any plans to add ARR Field Day or other ARRL on the air events? I hope so. This is something that we haven't gotten to yet, but if there is a database for that, that is beyond like an API, that is beyond what we're already showing, then I think that's a great idea to add that. I often get great ideas when I'm doing these presentations. Thank you. I don't have to hire a research firm to find out what I got to do. I just open my inbox in the morning and people are telling me what to do with this all the time. All right. And that is the end of the questions. Are there any more questions that I can answer for you?
There was one question on the chat. Can you build a catalog of customized views? And that was from Eric.
Yes, Eric, let me answer that question. So here I am, and I'm looking at the North American view. If I go back to the menu, I'm going to go into configuration profiles. This is under general, and I'm going to come down here to change configuration profile. You see that I've just got a few set up. I haven't really put time into it, but it will save the configuration of the screen that you're currently on. So you name it, and then you exit out of that screen, and it saves whatever you've got. So that way you can see ham, weather. You can mix and match. It also solves the problem of the Geochron not being able to show all 85 layers simultaneously without blowing up, because you could see I think usually about half of that, 40 layers simultaneously. But even that's pretty busy. Like here, I'm showing what, 12 layers simultaneously. So we're a long ways from maxing out the unit. But if you'd like to see all the data, configuration profiles is a great way to go. That's why we built it into the system. Other questions? Oh, I've got more. Hold on. Lewis asks, is the coupon good for purchasing multiple units, and is there an expiration date? We usually reset the coupon code at the end of the month. So I'd suggest that you do that. And then multiple units, no, it's good. Gosh, I don't know the answer to that question. It should be good for multiple units. If it's not, here's the answer. The answer is patrick@geochron.com. So I say
I knew
yes.
that was coming.
Yeah. So I say yes, and I'm the head wrangler. So there's that. Let me come back to the next question. All right. Scott asks, I need to share this presentation. That would be a great question for the moderator. I don't know the answer to that question. Randy asks, the coupon is good for how long? Probably till the end of the month, I think. Ham Agnew asks, what monitor on Amazon do you recommend? The cheapest one. So that would be, I use a TCL here in the office. You could do Roku. I can't tell the difference between the expensive ones and the cheap ones. I can tell the difference between a 40-inch monitor and an 85-inch monitor. It just gets bigger. But most hams, they'll have it's kind of limited by wall space because it is a ham shack. So, all right. I got a 4K T monitor. Oh, yeah. So will the presentation be as good on a 4K monitor? The answer is there's no difference because it's the same amount of pixels, whether it's a monitor or a TV. The TV is much less expensive. Some people will have 4K monitors, and that just means it's got a few more bells and whistles, but doesn't change the number of pixels through which the Geochron is being presented. Craig, I have a large room that I plan to either mount a huge 4K TV on or go a projection, like your left field example. What's the largest screen that works well with your program? So the biggest one I've ever seen, and I don't have a quick picture of it, is 180 feet across. And that's because the tech that was doing audio visual for a Beyonce concert in Vancouver, BC, put it on the screen before the start of the show and took a picture. So that was great. However, it all depends on the viewing distance. So if you're looking at it like here in my office, I'm standing 4 or 5 feet away. 42 inches is great. You can see everything. But if you are standing 20 feet away because it's in a large room, then probably something bigger. I don't think anybody usually goes bigger than 85 inches because if they do that, they're just trying to make a point. But for usefulness, it just depends on how far. So like in a room, 42, 48, that's going to be fine. All right. And that is the end of the questions that I have that are in the Q&A. Does anyone else have other questions? Other questions, anybody? All right. Yeah.
I'll quickly answer the question about the video. We'll post a link on our website, www.qcwa.org, of the video, which will have it available for anyone that's missed it and that wants to relook at it again because of any type of connection issues that were occurring during the stream. As we can't control what Zoom data centers are acting up at times, but appreciate everybody attention to this awesome presentation. Patrick, you did an awesome job.
You bet. Thank you so much. And also, I've done at least 100 videos on YouTube of how to put it together and the different features that we have. So some of them are dated, but some of them are always up to date. And you can always find me at patrick@geochron.com for specific questions too. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time today and everybody that was able to join us. I did put the coupon link on the webinar chat.
Okay.
And and we'll also have more information on your presentation. We'll be posting that on our main page. at least until the end of the month, so people can, see your presentation. And if they have any, questions, of course, your website will have a lot of those questions mostly answered, or your YouTube page as well. So I appreciate your time, man, and we're we're all free to drop, and then have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thanks everybody for having me.
All right, man. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.